Good afternoon, everybody. Sorry about the technical delays that we've had today, but we're ready to get going. Thank you all for joining us and welcome to the November Pharmacy Forum presented by the Canadian Foundation for Pharmacy. The topic for today's forum is From Burnout to Balance, featuring experts and pharmacy owners who have dedicated to helping pharmacists achieve a work-life balance. I am Linda Pertula, the Executive Director of the Canadian Foundation for Pharmacy. The foundation began in 1945, and it's Canada's only registered pharmacy national charity for pharmacy. Our mission, in 6 words, is to help advance the profession of pharmacy. We do that by raising funds for grants and awards that our board of directors bestows on deserving researchers, innovators, and leaders in pharmacy. Through our Innovation Fund, we have granted more than $2 million for research projects, many of which help prove the value of pharmacy services under expanded scope of practice. This year's Innovation Fund awarded $100,000 to 2 recipients, Larry Leung of the University of British Columbia, whose research team seeks to advance the pharmacist's role of substance use disorders in remote Indigenous communities. And Jeff Nagy of the University of Waterloo, whose research will capture how community pharmacist-led warfarin therapy management improves health outcomes. At CFP, we're also very proud to fund the Wellspring Pharmacy Leadership Award, which provides pharmacists with up to $10,000 in financial aid to foster personal development and leadership. CFP also advances the profession through educational content, through its annual Innovation Showcase, our Pharmacy Management Textbook in Canada, and today's Pharmacy Forum. We could not do this without donations from individuals and the support of our corporate partners. If you're not already a donor, I ask each one of you here today to consider adding CFP to your personal list of charities. It is an easy, effective way to give back to the profession. And a huge thank you today to our generous corporate sponsors. Our Platinums, GSK, Shoppers Drug Mart, and Loblaws. Our gold sponsors, Amgen, AstraZeneca, Pfizer, and our silver sponsors, On Farm United. Today, I'm very excited to bring you a webinar focused on a topic of interest to most pharmacists and pharmacy teams today: finding a better work-life balance. As a pharmacist who's been in the trenches myself, this topic is of personal interest to me. And I am so glad that CFP is helping raise the awareness and share solutions to help those in the profession go from burnout to balance. All right, that's enough from me. I'm thrilled to introduce our moderator, Amy Oliver. Amy Oliver is the founder and CEO of Amy Oliver and Company. A licensed pharmacist and a certified leadership coach, she holds an MBA in organizational leadership and health administration, as well as certificates in emotional intelligence and advanced strategic management and leadership. Amy has coached and advised hundreds of health leaders, teams, business owners to drive performance, concentrating on organizational behavior and operations. She has won several professional practice and leadership awards locally and internationally. She has been selected by the Governor General of Canada as an emerging leader. She is passionate about bridging gaps around strategy, management, and leadership through knowledge translation at the crossroads of health and business. We are so lucky to have her today. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you so much. Can everyone hear me and see my slides? Thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. Well, thanks so much for having me. It was a very kind introduction. I've included a disclosure slide here, but I have nothing really to disclose. So we'll jump right in and I'll try to catch us up a bit on time and speak a bit quickly. So I just want to start first by saying that I am joining you today from Treaty 1 land, where I have lived and worked and played my whole life, which is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. And our panelists and our audience today are joining from across the country, and I'd like to add that we acknowledge and respect the treaties and the traditional territories of the many nations we are all gathered on today. And I hope to learn and unlearn from and about Indigenous communities across this country. And as we all work in healthcare, it's important to acknowledge, address, and commit to change and growth with respect to the systemic racism that exists towards Indigenous people in healthcare and the impact of colonialism on the health of Indigenous people. Over the past few years, we've witnessed a concerning increase in burnout rates among healthcare professionals, including pharmacists, and the COVID-19 pandemic acted as a real catalyst for change within our profession, but also became a significant source of burnout. And as we emerge from the tail end of this pandemic, the shifts in healthcare dynamics have created a new set of challenges. And while the expansion of our scope is indeed exciting, many pharmacists still feel burdened by increased workloads. Balance is a really tricky word and something that feels unachievable or unrealistic for many people, especially in the pharmacy and healthcare community. And I'll get into some details around burnout, and our panelists today will share some strategies around managing burnout and promoting great balance as well. And on a personal note, I can share that I'm a recovering overachiever and a recovering perfectionist, and that there are some intentional steps and mindsets you can adopt to reframe your own work-life narrative and your own professional identities. And I'll get more into that later. I do think that balance is hard to achieve as a busy professional, but I'll challenge you to look at your lives and consider that while perfect balance is not always possible in the day-to-day environments like ours, it is something that you can intentionally create over a month or within a year. So let's dive in. As you all know, pharmacies are often the first point of contact for individuals who are unsure where to seek help, and we take immense pride in serving that role. However, the load we bear is heavy and sometimes uncompensated and often unrecognized. Burnout is a term that we hear frequently, and I just want to take a moment to clarify exactly what it means. In 2019, the World Health Organization officially recognized burnout as an occupational phenomenon with three main characteristics. The first of these characteristics is emotional exhaustion, a relentless feeling of being drained and depleted. The second is negativism and cynicism, where under periods of heightened stress, individuals might begin to lose their optimism and start to doubt whether there's still a light at the end of the tunnel. And finally, the third characteristic is reduced professional efficiency, which in our world can manifest as an overwhelming inability to make decisions, a sense of helplessness, or potentially even a surge in errors. And there's certain factors, societal influences, if you will, that revolve around stereotypes and self-perception issues. And these elements play a crucial role in the well-being and mental health of our pharmacy professionals and the ability to counter burnout and move towards a more balanced and healthy work-life narrative. Stereotypes in pharmacy practice often shape the way society views and interacts with pharmacists. And one pervasive stereotype, and hear me out on this one, is that pharmacists are perceived as highly intelligent individuals who have undergone rigorous educational and training processes. Now, while this stereotype is actually true for many, it can also lead to the assumption that all pharmacists are exceptionally knowledgeable and skilled in every single area of healthcare. And I also hear from pharmacists regularly that the weight of this expectation can actually be really overwhelming, leading to feelings of inadequacy and stress. Another prevalent stereotype in our field is the notion of pharmacists as workaholics who are constantly busy and totally overworked. This stereotype can create the perception that pharmacists prioritize their careers over their personal lives and that this is expected of all of us. And the relentless nature of this expectation can start to contribute to work-related stress and make it challenging for pharmacists to establish a healthy work-life balance. Pharmacists face the stereotype of being expected to have all of the answers and all of the solutions, even in cases where the medical field or regulatory frameworks may not yet have a definitive answer. And this starts to create unrealistic expectations and places additional pressure on pharmacists, contributing to the fear of making mistakes and the pressure to always deliver the right solution. So it's important to recognize that these stereotypes are not universally accurate, and they can vary greatly among individual pharmacists. Each pharmacy professional has their own unique personality, experiences, and approach to their profession, and it's essential to acknowledge this diversity. So to conquer burnout and move forward into healthier professional lifestyles, pharmacists need to tell ourselves new stories to help correct the self-perception issues that are constantly fueled by societal stereotypes and unrealistic expectations. And this will help to combat a range of the challenges in pharmacists' personal lives and professional careers. The thing about stereotypes when you can identify when one is impacting you and actually name it, we're more likely to then deal effectively with it and move forward. So perfectionism, for example, is a common issue that many pharmacists experience. And the stereotype of pharmacists as infallible experts can lead to perfectionist mindsets among pharmacists, where we then feel compelled to absolutely never make mistakes, to be able to serve people immediately, and to have all of the answers, even when situations are complex and uncertain. And the pressure of perfectionism creates anxiety and stress. Many of the pharmacists I work with share that they have a fear of not living up to the standards set by society or even self-imposed expectations. And workaholism starts to result from the stereotype that pharmacists are always available and that they work absolutely tirelessly. And so pharmacists start to feel pressured to work long hours, take on excessive patient loads, sacrifice personal time to meet these expectations, which ultimately is leading to burnout. So I wonder, is being the most accessible healthcare provider coming at a steep cost? And what is the trade-off that comes with this title that we've been so proud of for so long? And the pressure to uphold the stereotype as being confident and unflappable as a pharmacist can discourage pharmacists from starting to seek help for their own mental health challenges, fearing that acknowledging struggles can undermine their credibility. And it can also make it hard for pharmacists to acknowledge their limitations. They might struggle to accept that they can't be all things to all people and need to start setting boundaries to maintain their own well-being. Additionally, we're seeing pharmacists focusing such an enormous amount of their time meeting perceived expectations of their profession that they're starting to neglect personal passions and interests, which can lead to a sense of unfulfillment. So the point is that addressing these self-perception issues requires a shift in both individual and also systemic attitudes. Pharmacists are humans too, and it's absolutely acceptable to have limitations, to have boundaries, and to seek help when needed. Healthcare businesses also play a role in fostering supportive environments that prioritize pharmacist and pharmacy team well-being, address burnout, and promote a healthier work-life balance. And by challenging some of the unrealistic expectations and stereotypes, the pharmacy community can start to create a more sustainable and fulfilling professional experience. If you're part of an organization, or if you're an owner or a manager, there are critical steps you can take within your businesses and pharmacies to protect your team from burning out, safeguard your business from the negative impacts of high turnover and reduced productivity, and ensure the well-being of the communities that rely on your services. And it might be cliche, but it's an essential one, and that's that we can't expect our teams to take care of others if they're not taking care of themselves first. There's numerous organizational strategies and best practices that can support you and your team, and we don't have time to explore all of them today, but I'm really excited for our panelists to share some of their strategies as well. I just want to emphasize one really crucial aspect to consider right away, which is managing the overachievers on your team. It might seem counterintuitive, as we often rely on these superstars to maintain really high standards and hold everything together. But here's the thing. Many overachievers struggle to set healthy boundaries at work and often tie their self-worth to how much they know or how much they accomplish. And this makes them particularly vulnerable to burnout. So whether you're an overachiever yourself, or you can identify one on your team, someone who constantly says yes to additional tasks or continuously is compensating for the underperformance of others, these individuals are at a high risk of burnout. And they feel like their hard work is often rewarded with more work, which eventually leads to an unsustainable cycle. So one effective, but sometimes counterintuitive strategy is to build high-performing team environments, which means not always scheduling your highest performing pharmacist with your lowest performing pharmacy assistant or technician, or vice versa. Sometimes it's beneficial to let high-performing pairs work together and witness the synergy that can create. Another really critical aspect of managing your overachievers is keeping track of the additional demands placed on them. Here's the thing, if you don't address the organizational factors that impact your overachievers, they will eventually leave, and you will be blindsided when they do. And this is often the point where pharmacists move into crisis management and I start getting calls. And lastly, when it comes to individuals, all of you listening, it's really essential to remember that you are more than just your role as a pharmacist, right? Pharmacy is not your entire identity, and you deserve to nurture the parts of yourself that exist outside of the world of pharmacy. You're allowed to prioritize self-care, and you're allowed to put yourself first. Operating in pharmacy environments can be mentally and emotionally taxing, with brains and nervous systems constantly on high alert. Our nervous systems are designed to launch automatic responses to life-threatening situations like encountering sharks or bears, not to react to workplace stressors, yet they do. And we need to take some steps to manage our cognitive, behavioral, and nervous system reactions and responses effectively, turning down that sympathetic nervous system fight or flight response that has us constantly on edge, and elevate our parasympathetic nervous systems. So I'm excited for Manjeet to share today one of those techniques with us, because nervous system regulation strategies can really help us stay resilient in the face of constant challenges and stressors and help us maintain that balance that we need. So as I wrap up and move into our panelists and their best practices, I really want to emphasize that combating burnout in pharmacy requires a multifaceted approach that considers societal, organizational, and individual factors. And it's everyone's responsibility to set new stereotypes of pharmacists and pharmacies that are healthier and that serve our community better. So I'm so excited to introduce our panel today to walk us through some of their wisdom and tips and strategies to reducing burnout in themselves and also in their teams in realistic and implementable ways. These amazing pharmacists are implementing practical strategies now and today are helping us reframe the stereotypes of what is possible in pharmacy practice. At the end of this session, we'll have a Q&A period available as well. And with that, I'd like to introduce our first panelist. I'm just going to see if we were able to get Manjeet on. We were having some technical difficulties. Linda and Carolyn, do we have Manjeet here?
Yes, we do.
Do we? Oh,
yes,
there
He has a fake name, unfortunately.
It's not Juan. No, I don't speak Spanish.
There we go. Okay, I see Manjeet. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And Manjeet, are you able to share yours?
Hope so.
I'm going to go ahead and introduce you while you're trying to play with that. So Manjeet is a former owner and operator of a high-volume pharmacy for more than 18 years. Manjeet left community pharmacy in the fall of 2022. He witnessed the impact of the pandemic on his clients, far too many people relying on pills to solve their health problems, and wanted to be part of the solution. In his experience, taking a holistic approach to treating patients produces real change. Having attended retreats across 5 continents, he continues to improve and grow personally and has found breathing work to be a very important part of that process. Currently, Manjeet leads somatic journeys, presents breathwork to corporations, and organizes wellness retreats for burnt-out professionals. I'm so excited to welcome Manjeet to share this practical strategy that can be applied in a busy pharmacy environment by anyone. Manjeet, over to you.
Great. Thanks so much for that introduction, Amy. Everyone can hear me and see my slides? Excellent. Great. Yeah, thanks so much, Amy. That framework that you provided was very helpful because it helped to highlight what makes us unique as pharmacists and what makes our environments very unique. And like you alluded to, there's no wonder why so many pharmacists are dealing with burnout right now. At the same time, I mean, what if there were practical ways to manage a stress so we could, respond rather than react? When we're faced with stressful stimuli, and working in a community pharmacy obviously provides like hundreds of those episodes in a single day, if we're able to respond versus react, then we prevent this stress stacking that can sometimes occur. Because you can have a stressful event, but when you react to it, that can, further cause more stress. And it's really that chronic buildup of stress that, in my experience, has really led to burnout. So one of those practical techniques that I've used myself, and now I kind of in the process of teaching, is that of breath work. And when you define breath work, essentially it's just various breathing techniques that help to regulate our nervous system and promote physical and mental relaxation. And when you brought up that definition from the World Health Organization, burnout really starts from that chronic stress, which leads to mental and physical exhaustion that leads to cynicism, that leads to professional inefficacy. So when you look at the definition of burnout, and you look at the definition of breath work, you can see how utilizing breathwork techniques can really help you combat and help deal with the stress that you're experiencing in your day-to-day life. Now, breathwork is unique because it's safe, it's accessible to you 24/7, it's free, and it's also very effective at decreasing your heart rate, decreasing your cortisol release, increasing and improving your mood, increasing your HRV, which is a great practical way to measure your resiliency. Now, there's generally three types of breath work. There's functional breath work, which essentially is how are you breathing on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis. You know, I find it really ironic that we're taught how to drive a car, we're taught how to ride a bicycle, but very few of us are actually taught how to breathe. And when we breathe effectively, we can really maximize that oxygen exchange to get to our tissues and to our brain to respond in the moment with awareness. Now, the second kind of breathing technique or breathing kind of category is nervous system regulation, where we can use our breath proactively to shift between sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system states. So when you have fast, quick breaths, you're going to be going into fight or flight. When you have slow, deep, and controlled breaths, you're going to be stimulating the vagus nerve and going into the rest and relaxation states that Amy spoke about already. And lastly, we have deeper transformational styles of breath work. And these are essentially ways where we can use our breath to access deeper levels of consciousness that can provide us with creative solutions to problems. They can help us feel a little bit lighter, and they can actually help to dissipate and clear previous trauma. And as a gift to attendees for the webinar today, I'm actually doing an online free virtual event that's going to be held on November the 29th. So you can just, click that QR code and join. I'm happy to expose pharmacists to this third level of breathing that can sometimes help as well. Now, I also wanted to share some practical tools today in the time that I have allotted. And the average person will take about 14 to 15 breaths per minute. And I wear an Oura ring, which kind of tracks my breathing and my sleep and all these cool things. And even when I've been dispensing, I've actually been up to 18 to 19 breaths per minute. And that just means that I'm in that fight or flight sympathetic nervous system state. Now, what if there was a way that we could slow down our breathing and get to the best textbook case, which is about 6 breaths per minute? That's really what we're aiming for. And the way that we get there is by the optimal breath, which is a 5-second inhale and a 5-second exhale. And obviously that's challenging to do 24/7. But if you can do this more on a more regular basis throughout the day, it's going to lead to long-term benefits in your health. The other key important thing is when you're breathing, you want to try and breathe through your nose. And the reason for that is it will help to clean the air, it'll warm the air, and it's a very effective tool to increase the amount of nitric oxide that, as we know, is a very potent vasodilator. And finally, you want to practice belly breaths. So this is a breath that starts in the pit of your belly to really contract your diaphragm and really take advantage of the bottom third of your lungs, where the majority of oxygen exchange actually occurs. So now let's actually breathe. I'm going to be incorporating a couple of breathing techniques that I particularly find effective. And these breathing techniques, because we're so commonly in that sympathetic nervous system state, are going to help to provide us with a little bit of relaxation and shift us into that rest and relax phase. Now, the first one is box breathing. Now, box breathing, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about it. It is essentially a 4-second inhale, a 4-second hold, a 4-second exhale, and then a 4-second hold. And there's a couple of key things that we want to focus on when we're doing box breathing. The first is when you're inhaling, you want to inhale through the nose, and you want to start your breath from the pit of your stomach and have it travel upwards. During the actual breath holds, you want to try to relax. So the shoulders should come away from your ears, because oftentimes when we're holding our breath, we're usually in a fight or flight kind of response. So just totally relax yourself and really take in the moment. And finally, on the exhale, sometimes you can make a vocal tone or a sound which can release some tension. So let's begin with an inhale, 2, 3, 4. You can close your eyes if you'd like and hold. Now you can exhale. We can make an ah sound. Ah. And now hold on empty. Do a couple more rounds. So inhale through the nose, belly breath. Now hold, relax in this present moment, silence. Now exhale. You can also close your mouth and have a humming sound that also will increase nitric oxide production. And hold. Great. So that's a very practical tool you can use during transitions when you're shifting over from a patient console over to your computer, before you're actually stepping inside your home and you're kind of breaking the work cord and starting kind of the family or the personal cord at home. So that's one very effective tool. It's actually used by Navy SEALs before they go into combat because their heart is beating out of their chest, so it helps to relax them, but also it gives them the focus to make good decisions in the moment. And you can kind of equate a Navy SEAL's job to a pharmacist job because they're in a very stressful environment, and the decisions that they make could result in life or death. The other technique that I wanted to expose you guys to is the physiological sigh. And for those of you who listen to Andrew Huberman, this might kind of ring some bells. The physiological sigh only has to be done 3 or 4 times. And when you do this 3 or 4 times in a high stressful state, then in 60 to 90 seconds, it can actually have a significant decrease in your heart rate. So it's a really good tool to use after maybe you've gotten into it with a patient, or you've gotten an email like an OCP complaint or something like that, which just kind of really spikes your heart rate. So the way to do this one is we're going to inhale through the nose with a deep inhalation, and then we're going to follow it with a very quick second inhalation. So by the time we do that second inhalation, our lungs are full. And then from there, we're going to go immediately into an elongated exhale with a sound. Okay, so we only need to do 3 of these, and in 60 seconds, you actually will experience a decrease in heart rate. So I'll actually demonstrate 3 of these. So we breathe in through the nose. Breathe in through the nose. So it's actually very simple, and it's actually very interesting because even as I'm presenting and speaking to you today, my heart rate is a little bit elevated, and I actually feel a physiological shift as I'm actually doing this exercise. So very simple, and that's the beauty of breath work. It's very simple, it's very practical, and it's one of those tools that pharmacists can actually use in their day. We're not saying spend 20 minutes meditating. We're really just saying spend 30 seconds during these transitions throughout your busy day. And if you do that and practice it consistently, then what you can find is some really long-lasting positive benefits. So just to finish on those key points, really focus on those transitions, finish your patient counsel, go back to product check, or finish your dispensing shipping going into your office. That's a great way to use breath work. Practice consistency over quantity. So you don't need to say you're going to be doing it for 10 or 20 minutes. Spend a minute twice a day and just do that for a week and then go from there. And I've also listed some other apps which you might also find very effective. So thank you for the time today. And I hope that some of these tools can be incorporated into your work life and also your daily personal life.
Thank you so much, Manjeet, for sharing that with us. That's such a useful tool, and I'm really excited I'm going to make a conscious effort to start practicing that more as well myself. Our next panelist is Laura McDonald. She's an owner-operator pharmacist from Tofino, BC, located in the traditional territory of Clayoquot First Nation, and she's assumed an integral role in the medical community for more than 16 years. She created Epic Pharmacy 10 years ago from the ground up, a beautiful hub on the West Coast offering guests the highest quality services and products. Laura leads her employees through a systemized organization, allowing for freedom on and off the job. She's built a really psychologically safe culture and implemented tools for staff to operate autonomously, to communicate effectively. And when she isn't surfing, she's continuing to build her pharmacy as an amazing community hub. Laura, over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Is my audio okay? Maybe a few thumbs up. Great. I just want to say thanks so much for including me in this panel. It's really great to be alongside Manjeet and Sandy. Manjeet, I really appreciated your talk. I practice a discipline of yoga for 90 minutes twice a week that is all nose breathing. So I'd love to put it into more aspects of my life. So I really appreciate those suggestions. Amy, too, I had a chance to hear Amy speak, actually, ironically, earlier this fall before we were connected on this webinar. And I really appreciate her approach. It's like really refreshing that she's looking at pharmacy in a different way. So it's great being alongside of her. So I'm just looking forward to this conversation here. I don't have slides or anything. You just get me for the next 9 minutes or so. So I'll talk a little bit. Amy did a great job with her intro to kind of give you a bit of a zest of my life and what it's like being an owner, entrepreneur, pharmacist on the ground, front facing. My company, which is called Epic Pharmacy, a few years back, we went through an exercise to define a logo. And I do have to preface, I'm in the PharmaSave family. We're 860 strong, 860 stores strong across this country. It's a beautiful family to belong to. But I do have my own little independent logo that was created with my team. And when I was thinking about preparing for this talk, I actually noted that it's called the Freedom Feather. And there's 3 pillars in it. If you look at any of our Epic Pharmacy branding pieces, and the 3 pillars really represent the aspect of the pharmacy, the aspect of our retail program, and then the aspect of wellness. And when we look at wellness, we take that into our community, and most importantly, ourselves, the team that works at Epic Pharmacy, which I have been very blessed with some great past and present team members along the way in this journey. So what makes Epic Pharmacy a unique place to work and really touches back to some of these concepts that Amy introduced us to, and these ideas of burnout, is that we have a really strong employee value proposition. And what that means is, it's not only compensation and benefits, it's not only career stability and development, but it's also ideas around our company culture, our purpose and our mission, and most importantly, our work-life balance. So that's what I'm going to sort of highlight a little bit about how the business model that I've set up at Epic Pharmacy that's allowed and incorporated really work-life balance is the model that we run the pharmacy under. So I'm going to share a couple of ways that I've approached this along with my team, most importantly, and some of the successes that we've had with this process. So we actually use 2 main things. We have a holocratic business model. And for those of you who don't know what a holocratic business model, I'll get into that. And we use technology. So the holocratic business model is essentially defined systems that allow every individual in the company to operate as a bit of a sensor. So no information is too little or too much in this environment. And there's clear pathways that this information can get relayed. So we find that it really, it helps streamline things, and it doesn't allow things to wait on people because there's an outlet for them to communicate a certain aspect of the business that isn't quite working. Maybe they're finding a challenge against, or the really positive things that we can highlight and draw from and learn from. So within this holocratic business model, there's no hierarchy. Everyone is circular, if you would say, and there are some visuals, but I really won't complicate. I didn't have enough time to fully go into this modeling. but we work circularly, holistically. And this really has enabled us to move and mature, define really clear roles and responsibilities. And once we're able to do that in the organization, we're able to transfer that over into crossover and training. So people have way more flexibility in their roles, growth in their roles, opportunities for longer time off, vacation, shorter work weeks. These are all things that come in because we've been able to successfully create this holacratic system, leading to a really strong employee value proposition. And so, as an example, we're closed on statutory holidays. Most of my staff work an average of a 4-day work week. We're very flexible with unpaid time off. I think my front store manager just got back from 6-week kind of dream trip to Eastern Europe. We give everyone their paid birthday, the day off as a paid birthday. So we're really working, and in tangent with that, we also really integrate to the fabric of the community, which I think is so important in work-life balance when you actually feel like you're a meeting participant. Amy had commented about our beautiful land, Tloquet First Nation. You know, there's a strong connection with the ocean, with the trees, with the outside, and my staff have ability to kind of live in that and feel that, you know, in most of their daily lives, and that really helps with our, you know, the fundamentals of the business essentially. The other, before I head on, I guess I have to talk about technology. We have been at the front running of technology for many years, whether it's this communication system that I was describing to you. All of my staff have a work-specific communication system, so we don't have a texting culture. No one's getting text to come into work. No one's getting text for company announcements. We all have an internal chat that's dedicated. There's a commitment to log on to this system and get caught up with what they've missed on their days off or over their vacations. Their tasks are clearly laid out for them. You know, it's still used for, you know, beautiful fun and photos and memes and the things that create a bit of culture in the business. We have one employee who travels a long distance by boat, 45 minutes every day. She works the weekends for us. So not 5 days a week, but she always sends us a beautiful photo of the ocean or the landscape into the chat when she arrives to work that day. So, you know, we're able to use technology from down to our talent management system, which deals with our HR, to workflow functions in the dispensary with paperless workflow, you know, vivid pill counters, hopefully a blister assist machine. In the front store, we're doing things like self-checkout and various other technologies just to really improve their lives on a day-to-day basis, because we do understand all those things that lead to the small things that kind of accumulate throughout the day. If we can streamline those and make them a little better, then that's where we want to be. So lastly, you know, I just want to say we also embrace attrition at this pharmacy. We're a part of it. We don't see departures or people moving on as like a complete loss. We look at what we've learned from that individual in that role, how we've grown as a company together, what their next steps are, how we can support those. And we found that that's a really positive way to approach. And this has evolved over time. I didn't nail this coming out of the gate, by the way. This is 10 years in the making. So it certainly takes practice, and it's certainly not perfect, but I do believe that we're, you know, getting better at it every day. So as I wrap up, as I mentioned, getting to see Amy speak in September, I was driving back from that conference with a colleague, and they said, like, how do you do such a good job with, you know, all these things that get thrown at you? And, you know, like minor ailment or, you know, some of the technology upgrades I mentioned, like self-checkouts or new softwares we're using, or even natural disasters like wildfires or water shortages. These are all things my community has faced. We use the same mechanism, the same system. The content is different. How we roll through the the problem, there's different suggestions and there's different ways, but because we have that basis, because we have that foundation, nothing seems over challenging. I don't want to say it's easy, but we have a clear way that we tackle everything. And so, it doesn't matter. It all flows through this setup. So I think, that familiarity really helps, in the day-to-day lives of my staff, contributing to having better and more fulfilled lives outside of work. So sorry, I put a timer on just to keep on track. And I think I was just about to wrap up. On a personal note, I don't think work-life balance is a destination. You just get there and check it and like, oh, I'm work-life balanced. I know that there's time and space where, I feel more work-life balanced, and then there's time and space where I'm working really hard. And I think it's enjoying that equilibrium too, because it can't all be perfect. And I've had a clicheism too, you work hard to play hard, and I think that's an important aspect. So thank you so much for this time, and I'll turn it back to Amy.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I could listen to you talk all day about some of the amazing things you're doing in your space. And I look forward to hearing more in the future. I'm going to turn it over to Sandy right away. Sandy is a passionate leader who strives to deliver excellent patient care within her niche in community pharmacy, where she owns 4 medical clinic-based pharmacies. She graduated from McMaster University with a Bachelor of Science with a genetics specialization, and later led her to complete the Master of Science in Pharmacogenetics at the University of Toronto. She later graduated from the University of Waterloo with a degree in pharmacy to improve one-on-one access to patients and play a pivotal role in their positive health outcomes. Sandy is certified with CAMH via the Opioid Dependence Treatment Certificate Program to provide care and support for patients dependent on opioids. She serves as a preceptor with the University of Waterloo's co-op program and loves giving back by presenting lectures in the program's business course. She brings best practices in leading teams, recognizing the need for a human element in management and the importance of time off and so much more. I'm so excited to hear from you too, Sandy. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Amy. Thanks for that intro. And thank you, Laura and Manjeet. Those strategies that you shared are really great, and I'm looking forward to incorporating them for sure in my practice. So yeah, as Amy mentioned, I have been a community pharmacist for about 10 years and an owner for 7 of them in a few different community settings. They are all pretty collaborative settings. So I do work with a wide range of people. So I think this topic is really important when discussing work-life balance. And I'm glad it's being brought up because I think as pharmacists, but also non-pharmacists, we fall into this trap of, believing that we have to be productive at all times. Pharmacy definitely is a revolving door and the work doesn't really end. So I think it's important to keep that in mind, not only for ourselves, but, to communicate that to our team members that, today we did our best, tomorrow's another day. And tonight, it's time to just unwind and relax. When I was first asked, this question about work-life balance, and as I was reflecting, I kept going back and forth between, providing work-life balance for my team and strategies that I use to achieve that for them. But sometimes if you only focus on providing work-life balance for your team, then sometimes you can get lost in your own workload. Or anyone who's in a leader, manager, supervisor role, it's also important to remember to find your own balance, which I'm going to talk a little bit about that at the end. All right, so here are the 4 strategies that I'm going to kind of cover today. The first one, and it's mainly focusing on that human factor, or that incorporating that human element into practice. So the first one is to just get curious. Who are the people that make up your team? Everyone at the end of the day is somebody's mother, father, daughter, son, friend. And so it's really important to get to know them and their specific needs. What are their career goals? And not just their needs, but what about their family's needs? What stage of life are they in? Do they have young children that go to daycare that sometimes they do have to leave early to go pick them up? Or, perhaps they are caregivers to their elderly parents and, they have to take them to medical appointments that, they can't drive themselves to. So I think it's really important to, really get to know what life stage that they're in, because understanding it can provide us a lot of insight into how to create balance for them. And also on a personal level, how do they like to spend their time outside of work? Do they have a business on the side or like a side hustle? So I think encouraging personal fulfillment is really important in the workplace. For example, we had a technician who made candles and she makes soaps as well. And we offered to have them being sold at the pharmacy as part of our front shop, in a way to support her. I know a lot of employers don't always encourage this, but a lot of studies have actually shown that people who do have like a side business often are more engaged at work and they are happier in general. So I think it's a nice way of incorporating that into our workplace as well. So just to end with that first strategy, I think it's just really important to get to know your people and to allow them to be part of the definition of work-life balance. So what it means for me might not be what it means for them. And I think kind of investigating what's going on in their personal lives will allow both of you to get to that point. The second strategy I wanted to cover is flexibility, and this idea of being open to non-traditional work hours or even non-traditional roles. I'm going to start with an example that I had of a staff member. She was suffering with social anxiety for a short period before she was properly treated, but she really insisted to keep working because it helped her and made her feel better, but she preferred to come in either before or after our operating hours. So she would come in at 6 a.m. She would process all our faxes that came in the evening, like throughout the night. She would prepare blister packs for the next few days, even like she would look ahead for the next couple of weeks. And there would be a lot of work kind of ready to be checked once the rest of the team came in. And she would sometimes even come in during the weekends or evenings, to do some OTC organizing. And she was so grateful that we could support her during that short period. And I think it showed her how much we do care about her personal life, and that her health is the priority and it will always come before work. So I think, being accommodating when you can is very important. But on another note, since we're on flexibility, I think it's also important to make sure with flexibility to also have boundaries, because sometimes when you're being too flexible or there aren't enough boundaries, unbalance can definitely creep in and can weigh heavily on some of the other team members. So, trying to create balance for only one person might not make sense for the rest of the team. So at the end of the day, it still needs to make sense for the operations of the pharmacy. But I think being open to unique ways to get the work done, but also accommodate each other can definitely be achieved by, considering being flexible. My third point is about open communication. So I really like to start our day with either like a small team huddle or some time that just does not involve talking about work. It's a way to keep that human element. I find that fosters this really nice, positive workplace. Also, communicating as a team about our vacations and schedule preferences is really encouraged at our meetings. So it's kind of like a group discussion. And I find that when we discuss it openly and together, when one person says, oh, I think I'm going away, the first week of August, the others will kind of chime in and say, you know what, then maybe I'll take mine end of August. And it feels more like we're working together because we know we have to hold down this fort of the pharmacy. And so in a way, it shows everybody that, you're an essential part of the team, you're needed, but that, your time off is also very valued and encouraged. And sometimes doing it as a group, I find we can plan for it better. So that way, again, not creating unbalance for somebody who's getting a lot of work-life balance. And just like I like to start my day with a huddle, I think the end of the day is really important in pharmacy. Like I said, it's a revolving door. The work doesn't really end, especially with faxes continuously coming in, patients walking in, endless phone calls. It can be very overwhelming, especially at the end of the day, to kind of feel like, did we even get much done? But I always like to end the day reminding myself and the team again, we did what we could. Today was a good days of work, and there's tomorrow, and tonight we're going to enjoy the other part of our life, because work is not our entire life. So that's more about the open communication. And then my last strategy is to practice what you preach. Last but certainly not least, we have to take care of ourselves. And technically, it should be first. I always like to think of the analogy of when you're on an airplane and they always instruct you to put your oxygen mask on first before you help those around you. A pharmacy could really fall apart without, a healthy, balanced leader. And so working 24/7 or feeling that we have to be productive at all times, just to progress our business or our work, I personally don't believe that that is always the effective route. As an owner or manager, it's our responsibility, I think, to set that tone and create this work dynamic. So if we're the ones, if we're taking our own advice and implementing some of the things I recommended, then others will feel also comfortable, but will also feel fulfilled. And it can start with things like, just like you're curious about them, you can share things about your life and show them and let them know about your hobbies and the things that you enjoy doing outside of work. And as an owner, for me, I like to carve time, and I make sure to schedule in things. So things that are important to me. So I'll schedule in, important meetings that I have, but I'll also schedule in things that I know I need. So for me, for example, it's exercise. It's in my calendar. It's there. I know I can, it's not something that's going to be left to, if I have time today, I'm going to do it. We all know the short and long-term benefits of exercise or even going out for a walk, and it's so important to schedule it, even if it means waking up early while everyone's sleeping. At the end of the day, like for me, it improves my mood, reduces stress, makes us feel more energetic throughout the day. And sleep also, like, not that we have to schedule in sleep, but sometimes we do, whether it be putting in some notifications on our phone or, like now, you can do that on the iPhone or other phones, I'm sure, to sort of like set, your sleep time. And so everything kind of unwinds. You can't access your apps after a certain time. So I think that's also really important. Other ways is just, good nutrition. As pharmacists, we have to take breaks throughout the day, eat well, pack a lunch for yourself, take breaks throughout the day. You can't just always be, go, go, go. And then sometimes you also have to ask yourself, do I always need to be there? I had this habit of feeling like I had to physically be at the pharmacy, and I would always imagine like a fire that I could put out, if I was physically there. But I think it's, rethinking that and, what can I delegate? Can I let go? Is it a me problem where I feel the need to always be there? Because sometimes it highlights other people's strengths when you kind of do let go and then be able to have your own balance. And then my last piece of advice for this last strategy is to reach out to experts, find technology solutions, just like Laura was mentioning, to simplify your life. Get someone to do bookkeeping for you. Reach out to people that are experts at things that you are not necessarily experts in, to sort of offload that responsibility for you. And so, yeah, those are the main 4 strategies I try to incorporate. And I do think it's important to always lead by example.
Thank you so much. These are just such wonderful words of wisdom from everyone. In the interest of time, I think we'll open it right up to audience member questions. You should be able to use the Q&A function in the webinar app. I see one coming here, a comment or question from Don Murphy. What a terrific group of panelists, authentic commentary. I want to come work for all of you. Look, you guys are recruiting now too. As a non-pharmacist, all your suggestions have applicability to our business at Pear Healthcare Solutions. Thank you for the strategies and reminders. Lovely. Well, thank you for that comment. I think that we do appreciate it. Everyone here has put a lot of time and effort into being intentional about the things they talked about today. And I think that's a real good takeaway, as intentionality will certainly help move us forward. And we appreciate your comments. I'm happy to take any other questions or pass them along to our panelists. I'll give it a minute to see if anything comes in. And maybe while we're waiting for some questions to roll in, I can ask some. Manjeet, I'll throw the first one out to you. So I have a question about, in your experience in so many years in such a busy community pharmacy environment, thinking about incorporating breath work, how do you think that people can maybe think about habit stacking? So for those of you that aren't familiar with what that means, it's sort of like how we sometimes will tell patients to take like their oral contraceptive when they're brushing their teeth, right? If you match things together, maybe it will help you remember or remind you to do it throughout the day. In your experience in community pharmacy, can you give some examples of maybe habit stacking or other strategies for people to remember to operationalize this throughout the day?
Yeah, sure. I mean, to be honest with you, when I first started, I actually would use the alarm feature because sometimes you're so busy that you're just kind of in unawareness. So I actually use the alarm feature to begin with. And then that kind of got it to a point where I actually started remembering on my own. And then what I did was, say if I was giving someone a vaccine, every time I would, be drawing it up or filling out the paperwork, it would be like this automatic connection. It was almost like built-in muscle memory to do like 3 5-second breaths in and 5-second breaths out. The other thing is like the transition piece, I think, is really super important. Like every time I would leave the dispensary and go in the counseling room, every time I go through that doorway, I would, take a deep breath. So I think it's just the awareness piece, because once you have that awareness piece built in, then there's so many different breathing techniques that, we don't have time to talk about today, but there's so many other breathing techniques that you can utilize and put into your day-to-day. So really it's just a matter of looking at your environment and seeing what are opportunities for me to just be more aware in the moment. Another one that I would do is after I finished my dispensing shift and I went into my office, I'd actually do like a 1 minute, like a box breathing for, like 6 or 7 rounds. So that might be a little bit longer, but just that transition would also help me shift my mind and, physically into, okay, like the dispensing is over now. Now I need to focus on a totally different skill set and like what do I need to do now. But if I didn't have that transition and I just went from dispensing straight into my office, I would always feel like, oh, like I gotta remind, this person to check this, or I need to do this. And I was neither here nor there. So using the breath just to be in the present moment, I think, is a key thing. And there's no easy formula. It's just a matter of awareness. So it means different things to different people. So yeah, I kind of went all over the place, but that's how I used it personally.
Lovely. I see one question about whether this is being recorded. It is being recorded. Another comment saying this is well done and timely. Then we've got a question from an audience member. So maybe I'll throw this over to Laura or Sandy to answer. The question is, are there things employees can do to constructively speak to their employers who aren't making work-life balance a priority? Suggestions to that question?
I can start. I feel like Sandy's got she's got the no. So I'd like her to listen to that too. I think in our environment, having those like quarterly check-ins with the employees sort of on a regular basis, and if not quarterly, sort of in passing, and those moments just to sort of, gauge how they're doing with it. Again, I know, the exchange of stories I hear when people come back from their days off, it's all very fulfilling to hear what activities they've been up to, or what family gatherings they've been at, or, whatever that is. So I think sometimes it's just even conversational. You can kind of get a sense. So that's some of my perspective on that.
Sandy?
I think also, like, from the employee perspective, I think it's important to communicate it, and communicate that life stage you're at, or, if getting personal about why do you feel that work-life balance isn't a priority and how it can affect your performance. I guess talking about it in a performance way to an employer, if you're an employee, I think also, can make a difference. Like, this is how, this lack of balance is affecting my performance. It's overwhelming me. It's affecting my, my young kids at home. I think it's the approach is to just explain like what's going on and why you really need that work-life balance. And I would love to know that one of my employees doesn't think that we're achieving it there. So as an employer, I would rather know than not know. So I think, whether it's at a neutral time and not, at a time where there's like some friction, to bring it at a neutral time. Face to face is always good. I love the quarterly meetings as well. But I think just being open about what's going on and why it's important to you.
I can add one comment to that too, and that's that the way that we frame our discussions will impact the outcome of your discussion. So often in these types of conversations between employees and employers, regardless of which way that's going, it sometimes comes off as conflict, right? I want this, you don't want this, or this is causing a problem for you. If we can be really intentional about our choice of words and make it look like we're on the same team and we're trying to solve a problem together, then we're usually more effective. So saying something to your employer like, look, I know that, managing this business is really important to both of us. I know serving this community is important to both of us. Here's the problem. And you explain it. How can we work together to find a solution to this, rather than saying like, I need this or you have to do that. It goes a lot farther if you're really intentional about your choice of words to look like and feel like you're on the same team trying to solve a problem together. Any other questions that we can tackle from the audience here?
One thing I'll just add to that, Amy, while we're still waiting is, I think, when I owned and operated a pharmacy, one thing that I particularly appreciated is if an employee came to me with a solution. So they might come to us with a problem, but if they're saying, listen, I did some breath work, or I did some yoga, or I attended this, I think it'd be great for our team to do it. Is that something that you're open to? And as an owner, if I'm hearing solutions, then I can be like, yeah, you know what, that's a great idea. And it's also less work for me as an employer because I have an engaged employee who's willing to take the lead on that. And then I can just facilitate that. And sometimes as an employer, it even maybe even makes me look like even better. But if you're an employee, I would highly recommend providing some solutions that you and your employer can speak about, because it will increase the buy-in that your employer will have, in my experience at least.
I like it. That kind of brings me to another question that I have. Maybe Laura, you can tackle this one a little bit. We're thinking about like psychologically safe workspaces and how in your space, you've really created an environment, both from a communication perspective, but also sort of from a safety perspective, where anybody can bring up anything that they see going on. And in lots of work environments, we end up seeing people bringing up ideas or issues they feel like they're complaining if we haven't created an environment where we're actually inviting that type of question and feedback. So can you maybe add a little context to that and just talk about how, maybe in a bit more depth, how you've sort of created an environment or operationalized the environment to get people to give you feedback questions and not feel like they're complaining?
Yeah, so there's a few strategies in around this. So we have some pretty clear operational loops. I was trying to just describe the circular space that we operate in. Well, they're all these various types of loops, and they have themes to them. So some are relation to operations, some are in relation to our talent management, some are in relation to our business intelligence or our our branding or our communications. And then there's obviously one that's specific to the pharmacy and one that's specific to the front store, and then one that's specific to the overall company. So the mechanism in which, and it doesn't need to wait until these loops meet or anything, although there is a consistency to how these loops interface with each other. So there is always something, like there's always a time for it. And it sort of gets documented. And then there's a group discussion about every point that is, like I said, the good and the bad, or development pieces, or, and so it's not a surprise to anyone because of the formatting of how these discussions happen. And I sort of touched on it briefly, but the consistency is key. And I think Sandy mentioned this in her presentation too, when she carves out time sort of for meetings, important meetings, and your personal stuff. But my team know I'm available, and when I'm available, I'm 100% theirs. They have my full attention for that specified space. And so we might not get through everything depending on the volume of stuff we have to go through, but there's a space that they know is there for them. And so I think that lends to what your question is about, like being, having a mechanism for these types of ideas, or satisfactions or dissatisfactions. There's a way.
I like it. Wonderful. I'm looking at the time. I think I'll turn it back over to Linda to take us home. Linda, are you there?
I am. I want to first thank all of you guys for your sharing your insights and your tricks and your strategies for work-life balance. It has been very, very insightful. And just for those who are wondering, we have taped this so that if you want to see it again or pass it on to friends that were unable to attend today's webinar, it will be available on our website as a link. And once again, I just want to thank our corporate sponsors for sponsoring today's event: Amgen, GSK, Loblaws, Pfizer, Shoppers Drug Mart, and On Farm United. We couldn't do this without their support. And a big thank you to all of you for your time and your great presentations. And I want to thank everybody for participating or for joining us today. It's been one of our best attended webinars to date. So thank you and have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Nice working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.